Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. We are very fortunate to have a returning guest speaker today, Alyson Schafer, parenting expert. Alyson is a family counselor, TV personality, columnist, spokesperson, educator, and consultant. She is one of Canada's most notable parenting experts, and we're honored to have her hosting our webinar today. If at any time throughout this webinar you have any questions, please feel free to use either the Q&A or the chat function at the bottom of your screen at any time, and we'll ensure that these get addressed. Over to you, Alyson.
Thank you so much, Christy, and hi, everybody. I really appreciate you giving me your time. Boy, I'm sure you're almost sick and tired of hearing the cliche that these are unprecedented times. But it's had a major impact, obviously, around the world and on family life, the economy. There isn't anything that hasn't been untouched by our current circumstances. And because I work with families, and I have for the last 20 years, and I've been trying to provide as much as possible help and support during this time. And so I was quite pleased that my long history with Kids & Co. to be able to hopefully give you some good tidbits of information that will give you some feeling of sanity in these uncertain times. And more importantly, and part of our time here together, is to allow you to have expert engagement with an expert. So really, I want you to be able to ask me questions and give me a time to answer your questions and what your individual burning concerns are. But I did prepare some content, and I know you got a little bit of an outline, and I did a few slides, so we will start there. But please, the chat is not only for you guys to support each other and have a little peer-to-peer mentoring so that we don't feel so alone, but also that we can ask questions. So you don't need to wait until the end if you want to start posting questions. If you have questions about what I'm talking about, we can stop the conversation, stop the slides, and do some questions and then move on. So let's get the best value for you out of this time. And so I wanted to start with the first notion of the idea that chances are, if you're with Kids & Company, you have had your kids in their care, which means you're a working parent. And I know everyone's home situation is different. You may have another partner who can keep an eye on kids. You may still be dropping them off at some of the centers if you're an emergency worker. You may have school-age kids and you're trying to both work from home and do homeschooling. Everyone's situation is a little bit different. But what I would like to just point out in terms of the sanity part of this is that there has never been a time better for us to embrace something that I think is one of the benefits that's going to come out of COVID, which is that, you know what, we're all holistic. We're all human beings. Yes, we have been in the workforce. We've always been in the workforce, and we've always had families. And of course, Kids & Co. knows that because that's their business. But a lot of people, a lot of workforces, while they'll talk about mental health and while they'll try to be supportive around family life, it has not really been there. There has not been support for family life. In fact, a lot of people will say that they don't keep a lot of pictures on their desk of their family because they don't want to look like a worker who's not dedicated and might be passed over for a promotion. But of course, this little slide, if you haven't seen it, it's gone viral. The reason I chose this slide is that this was a BBC interview from a while ago, and as he's having this very serious, Skype interview for the news or whatever, his wife has turned her eyes for a moment and gotten distracted, and the kids come in and they bombard him in his office, which at the time you can see his total embarrassment. And the reason why we're laughing and enjoying this is this is everywhere now. If you look online at all, everybody is posting pictures of their kids crawling on their laps. Jimmy Fallon, who does The Tonight Show, has to do his from home, and he's trying to incorporate his kids, but you can tell they're not following along. They're wrecking the show or doing their way of interrupting. And it's, to me, beautiful for us to be able to understand, we're all just humble human beings. We always have been. We have never been perfect. We don't need to clean this up. There's never been a better time to just relax your standards. So everyone, we are all just doing our best. And if you're working from home, you were never hired to be a remote employee. This has been thrust upon you. You were never meant to be a nuclear family who couldn't go out and live in the bigger community. That's not the way, even though humans are social creatures and we're talking about socially connecting and keeping those bonds of attachment happening for our mental health, we were really never meant to just have a nuclear family all enclosed in a small dwelling we'll eat each other's heads off. It is supposed to be that you go out to school and you have aunties and nannies and grandmas to hand off the caregiving. So this is a highly unusual circumstance. For some families, it's been a benefit. For some families, we were already working too hard, too busy, too overscheduled. And for years, I've been trying to say, we need to slow down. We need to reconnect with our families. We need to have family suppers together. And this is forced upon us. No hockey practice, no ballet, no drop off. In a sense, it's forced it on us, but we weren't prepared. And so I think that's where there's sort of this scramble. But some people are saying, gosh, you know what? We've got all these new traditions that we didn't have before. And there's these secondary gains that people are really enjoying. But there's other families who are noticing that they had cracks in some of the way that they were functioning. And when you have cracks in the way your family dynamic is working, and then you're put in this situation, those cracks can grow and it can really reveal that you've got some struggles going on. So I hope we can find both the celebration of having time together and giving you some tips to heal some of those cracks so that you get some of those benefits for other people too. So the first thing I would say is if you're a worker, and again, everyone's different. If you were a remote worker, I would tell you to get an air-on chair and work by windows, and that would be really ideal. But again, you've been thrust into this and you weren't prepared. What I would say is that from a perspective of having kids underfoot and trying to get something done, accomplished, deliverables for your job, it will help you maintain sanity if your kids can physically see a physical space, a physical indicator, something very concrete. So if that is a room in your house that you can work out of where the door closes, fantastic. I understand that that is not always the case. I understand that, again, it could be makeshift. It might be that you're in an apartment and you don't have a space that's an office space. And so it's part of the dining room table that is co-joined to the living room. And if that's the case, how else can you establish a workplace? You might just simply put a sign on your desk that says "Mommy working." You might say something like, when I put earphones on, that means I'm at work. But you need to show something quite concrete and tangible that kids understand that you're creating some kind of a limit and a boundary. That this idea of multitasking, that you're just going to flop on the couch, with your laptop and try to look after the kids at the same time that you're trying to bang off a few emails is unlikely to get you the kind of production that you would like. And more likely it's going to get you kids who are constantly pulling on your pant leg, interrupting because they don't understand, why aren't you paying attention to me? You're here, but you're ignoring me. So what I want to do is to help you create when you can pay attention to your kids and when you're going to pay attention to work. When I'm available to do childcare and when I'm not available. So that's a clear, delineated path that is demarcated with as much concrete evidence of that as possible. And it's not going to happen on the first day. It's going to take us some practice and training, but with repetition, we can get better. So I want to show you how to do that. So the first is about scheduling. And I know that for some people, you might be the more, you like to be more free flow. Might just be your personality. And maybe you're not a schedule person. But the truth is, schedules are a must. And I know this as somebody who had my own kids at home when they were little while I was working. I've been working out of my home for 20 years. And so I raised my kids sometimes with a nanny, sometimes just with me, sometimes with a partner in the house, sometimes not. I've done every formulation of this. And when I was a nursery school teacher, that's when I learned that here were my little kids that would be, I couldn't even get through a day. It was chaos and boredom and like, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's already 11 o'clock and already I've run out of things to do with you. And it felt overwhelming. But when I worked as a nursery school teacher and I had kids exactly the same age as my own, and I realized, oh my goodness, because we have a day that's mapped out. You come in, you hang up your coat, you go over to, and you pick a puzzle, you go to the puzzle table, then we flick the lights, then we go to carpet time, and then we sing our morning song. It was very scheduled, and the kids behaved so well because they knew the expectations and life was predictable and they knew what was expected. And so they understood that snack didn't come until after carpet time, so they didn't come in starting asking you for graham crackers. So you can use the same thing at home. Now the schedule that I've got here is actually created by the kids. And I think that's really important, even though your kids are could be very little. I know maybe you could type in the chat box and Christy could tell me how old are your kids? Or yeah, what's the bulk of the people that have jumped on the webinar here? Are you talking little pre-verbal kids? If you are, then this schedule, and I've got another one to show you for older kids, but here you can see how visual this is. They just bought a clock on Amazon. The family sat down together and they co-created a schedule. These are very little kids, verbal, but still preschoolers. And they just kind of mapped out this particular clock was made around their morning routine. But you can see how the passage of time is marked with colors. So now we see it's not the hour. Understand that this might be from 20 after 7 till 20 to 8. We're going to do the yellow activity, which is breakfast and spelling. And then when the hand gets into the pink zone, this is when we're getting dressed. So the kids can see the passage of time and they can see the different events, and the fact that they created it gave them a great amount of ownership. And in fact, I think this family is, the kids have decided that they're going to make it like an Etsy thing and start a little business around it. But the ownership of that is so fantastic. But you could also, I want to show you another version. Now this is a COVID one. This is from Mabel's Labels. Julie Cole is a friend of mine. If you haven't discovered Mabel's Labels, are fantastic. But she is a mom with 6 kids, one of which is autistic, and they range in, you can't have 6 kids without spanning the age range. So notice that instead of thinking about each kid having individual schedules and how your schedule and your work schedule is going to overlap, we'll get into that. But just generally speaking, you want to break down your day, not to every minute, but she's done it just by hour. And there's some thoughts about plug in the stuff that you know first. So, we know we always have breakfast. We know we always have lunch. We know we always have dinner. So start with that hour. What else? Chores. You can see here she's got chores from 1:30 to 2:30, an hour worth of chores. Your kids can be helping out. If you're overwhelmed, you've got resources called children that can learn to sweep and clean and run a vacuum if you spend the time to train them. We'll get on that. And so again, notice the variety between the big outdoor muscles, the morning hike as a family versus the afternoon. They've got fresh air from 3:30 to 4:30 where you can do road hockey, rollerblades. So they're still being active, but and you need a lot of that, and it's interspersed. So there's different themes. Here they've got creative time, and she's given some examples of creative time with Lego, music, baking. So there's range. She's not saying what you have to do, but there's range, but she knows once a day we should probably be doing something creative. And notice that academic, for you that have school age kids, it could be that the academics is following the Ontario curriculum that their school has provided or their private school has provided. But notice that it's really about the idea that we need to exercise our brain every day. And so she's got academics, no electronics in the morning. So it could be that you just read. Reading is actually academic. It stimulates your brain. It doesn't matter what you read a fiction book. Journal. Journaling is writing. It's wonderful. Play Sudoku. That sounds like a game, but it's actually doing some numeracy. In the afternoon, she says, screens allowed. So this is more, again, you could watch an academic show. Now I say that again because, for example, I'm also working with Let's Talk Science that's trying to help encourage and support STEM learning. And on their website, they have mapped out the curriculum for every grade and every province. And they've put different videos and activities and experiments and all these things that are really, really super engaging. So if your kid doesn't want to sit in front and do their school learning, then I would say don't have a fight with them. It's academic time and they might go online, and you might have kids who are super compliant that really miss their friends and they really want to get on and talk with their teacher and they really like to download the activities that are put there by their teacher. And that's wonderful. It's meant to be, school is meant to be, the school, online schooling is meant to be additive to your family harmony. For some kids, it feels like normalcy and they're very excited to get going again. But if you have a child who has got learning disabilities, who's got attention deficit disorder, and you are fighting, feeling the pressure that you must homeschool, I promise you, parents, I promise you, I have spoken to the trustees. I have asked them what they are thinking, what the imperatives and what they're hoping to do. They do not want to stress families. If your child is not going to engage and this is a burden to your family, don't do it. They have a way that they will catch up students. They will know where students are. They have reduced the curriculum to the minimum pieces. Everyone's going to get caught up. No one is asking you to suddenly become a homeschooler. If the kids are interested, if you can put some time aside, great. But at least in these other areas, it's like you can teach kids about fractions by baking. You know, there's a million ways to engage the learning part of the brain, but don't feel like if you are not uploading homework and downloading 8.5 by 11 sheets or whatever, that you are failing. You are not. This will pass. They will catch up kids. The school is trying to be supportive of what's going on in your home life, not trying to diminish it. So, and again, we get dinner, we get FaceTime. You can see how they've played into the electronics there. I'll talk about that a little bit. But what's also important, this is both for you organizing your schedule at home, but also mapping it over to work, is that these chunks, she's rolling it in kind of 1 hour chunks because it kind of takes you an hour to get set up and cleaned or whatever. But research shows that the brain can really only do a good hyper focus for about 40 minutes before you need to switch tasks. So if you're working from home, you might say, fantastic, if this is the family schedule, I might decide that I'm going to hold up and get caught up on emails from yesterday before 9 o'clock breakfast, because that's kind of strategic. And you might decide, you know what, when those kids are actually on screens, that's when I know that they're going to be the most mesmerized and independent. So that's when I'm going to set up my calls that I have to make. So you can overlap your schedule with their schedule. And if you tell the kids, I'm working from this time to this time, you can put a stop sign on your door that says, stop, this is my working time. But you have to honor the schedule too. And what I mean by that is your kids will develop patience if you say, so I'm looking at the schedule. It says here that you're going to be working on your reading, studying, journaling, Sudoku. I'm going to go do my 40 minutes of my work. I will come out here and see you for lunch. You have to honor your commitment to come out when it's time for lunch, because your kids will learn to have patience if they know that you're going to come back. And then when you come back, you got to be on them. You got to give them your full attention. Don't come out with the phone in one hand and what are we eating, whatever. That's too confusing. You want to fill their bucket. You want to connect with them because you're going to go back to your office after lunch, or maybe you go for the you hang out for the family hike or whatever, and then you say, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do with your creative time. I'm going to come back out, and then you can show me your picture. I'll see you at this time. You can use a timer on the stove if you don't have kids that can tell time yet. But you honoring that is what's going to help them leave you alone to be productive. And again, I realize that some of you don't have a second person in the house to orchestrate this. They might get on or off schedule. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's better to have a schedule to stray from than have no schedule at all. How are we doing here, Christy? Are people putting up questions here? I see a couple of...
Good. Yeah, I just wanted to actually jump in on, I'll let you know that we've got quite a variety of ages today, all the way from infant to school age.
Okay.
So we can make sure to reference to all of those ages. And I also wanted to mention that we actually posted on our social media pages today under Kids and Company a schedule that we recommended for some of our families too. So there's a lot of them out there. So if anyone who's looking for the schedule that we posted can find that on our social media pages, as well as on our family resource room on our website.
Yeah. So I would say to parents, we need to figure out a schedule. Again, this is like a backbone scaffolding structuring. Use everyone's ideas as examples of how you might customize it to your family. But I can't stress enough that the kids are more likely to honor a schedule and take ownership for a schedule if they had some voice in creating it. Kids do less well when you impose a schedule on them. So I'm not saying you have to start from ground zero. You can use my examples, the ones on the Kids and Company, use it as your starting point, but getting the kids to sit down and work with that together is part of the process of ensuring that it gets adhered to. Right? That's like, it's one thing to write a schedule. It's another thing to adhere to it. That's a whole other kettle of fish, right? So here's an example if it worked for you. And again, they sort of address when screens are on and when screens are off. And I'm going to talk more about screens in a little bit. what I'd say is, how do we enforce the schedule once we've got it established? How do we say to kids, when I close my office door, you don't come in, I'm not to be disturbed, or, now is time for schoolwork. Well, what we know is that as parents, we tend to want to go verbal. We tend to get frustrated that our kids don't listen to us. And what I would say is we need to stop thinking about the power of our words. There is actually no power in, if you haven't figured it out yet, kids don't listen to what you say. They listen to what you do. And so it is better to actually create a consequence, have an action, rather than reminding and nagging and repeating the rules over and over again that doesn't take us forward, because kids really learn from experiencing the consequences of their choices, right? So, for example, a logical consequence might be, this is lunchtime. I'm here to join you with lunch. And you'll notice that there's like a little, this is broken into two decision trees. One decision that you might make is to come join me for lunch. It's lunchtime. And if you do, then I'll keep you company and we'll have a nice social time and you'll get some food in your tummy, and that's great. But another choice that you might make is that you don't come to the table when lunch is being served and you keep busy with whatever you're doing. And the consequence for that is you don't get any food in your tummy and you miss visiting with me. That's okay. That's a choice you can make too. But it means that when we look at the schedule and it's the lunchtime is over, we pop our plates away and there's no food again till snack time. So some kids are not hungry and that's absolutely fine for them. But the idea is they are making a choice for themselves and they are realizing that there's repercussions of the choices that you make. So it might be, we need people to share the iPad. If you guys fight over the iPad, well, I'm trying to get some work done here and you can't share the iPad without there being a fight, then share it nicely. You can keep the iPad. That's one choice down the decision tree. But if you choose to fight about the iPad, then we're going to put the iPad away and we'll try it again later. So, we need to use this. They might even use this in the center. You're at the crayon table. Crayons go on paper. So long as you can keep your crayons on the paper, then you're free to have a crayon. But if the crayon goes on the chair, on the table, on the walls, then we need to leave that part of the crayon center. Or at home, you might say, then the crayons need to go away. So keep the crayons on paper, keep the crayons. Crayoning in inappropriate ways, we lose crayon privileges, they get put away. Throw your toys. Sorry, it doesn't look like we're treating our toys properly. I'm going to put that toy on top of the fridge. You can try again later. So play with your toy safely, properly, keep your toy, throw your toy, mistreat it, toy goes away. Those are examples of consequences. So using a work example, and this was very hard for me, but again, I worked out the schedule at the time I had a nanny, but I explained to my kids, when I work and I close the door and you see the stop sign, I am not available. I didn't have to say that a million times, but what I had to do was to show them that with proof, which meant they banged and banged and banged on the door. They cried out for me. They stuck their fingers under the door. But that first day I knew it was a day that I was just helping them train and learn and understand that I meant business. And so I didn't plan phone calls. I wasn't overly productive, but the second day they banged less, the third day even less. And by the fourth day, they understood that I said what I meant what I said, that I did come up at the scheduled break times, and they stopped trying to fight that boundary. So it's sloppy in the beginning, but a few days of chaos will win you a lot of good behavior down the road once they understand that is the boundary. You mean what you say. So try those consequences. If you've got older kids, you can actually even say to the kids, what should the consequence be? If I tell you that it's time to get off the Xbox and you don't get off the Xbox, what should happen then? You can ask the kids to come up with consequences. Another big sanity piece for your kids then, and this takes up a lot of time. I know I want to kind of tie this into time and boredom, because not all of you are working from home, or some of you are working less. But this is an opportunity for us that up until now, most of our kids in our homes, and I'm generalizing, but most of the kids in North American culture really have a lot of service given to them. That because we're busy, or because we have nannies, or because it's faster, or because we have to get them out to hockey and ballet and all these other things that eat their time, we do a lot for our kids that they could really be doing for themselves. Our kids are not very independent. They're not. And so if they have relied on you to be their entertainment committee, if they have relied on you to make them their meals, if you've relied on you to do all the cooking and the cleaning and everything, the organizing, the making of their beds, the doing of the laundry, then you are overwhelmed right now. But the truth is, kids can learn a lot if we teach them. But teaching takes time because they're sloppy and they're slow and they don't know how to do it. So I'm noticing this is sort of breaking it down into 3 stages. The first one is explain, spend time. You know, this is how we make a bed. This is how we make a lunch. This is how we use an electric frying pan. This is how we use an electric can opener. Here's the buttons on the microwave, depending on the age of your child and what they're up for. But they like to learn these things. They like to learn how the dishwasher and the washing machine works. And so we show them all, we explain. So in the beginning, we do most of the talking, kind of like if you were teaching your kid to fish. I'm just saying that because I think you should take the same excited delight in teaching them all these other things. Stage 2 is you share the job together, right? So, you know, you're making muffins together and they're taking more and more responsibility for measuring the butter and using the blender and all these kinds of things, but you're in there together. And at the end, you can say, you know what? I just stood in the kitchen and I just watched you make that entire batch of cookies. I never had to say a single comment of advice. You know how to make cookies. You can make cookies for the whole family now. And they feel so proud that they're independent. They're so proud that they can like deliver up cookies or, you know, whatever these other things are that they might be doing for themselves and helping out in the family. They like feeling competent, believe it or not, but you do have to spend time. And so then we can hand over that responsibility. And again, if they don't help out with their hour of chores, we can talk to them about what's the consequence for not doing what the part that you were supposed to be doing for yourself. So spend this time for all those things that are just slow and hasty that you just haven't figured out, you know, that how do you braid your own hair? I don't know, what kinds of things are you working on with your kids at home around independence that you know, that you would be proud to say, gosh, you know, my kid's 8 years old and look what they can do. Once you watch like MasterChef Junior, realize those kids know how to do a lot. So this is a great way to fill your time when you're bored. Take that time when you're calm. I think we also need to be strategic in terms of the boredom with our screen time. And the reason why I say that is that boredom actually serves a purpose. So, you know, I said we've got that schedule and yeah, it's broken out into 1 hour, but if they do like a couple of rounds of Lego and then they're kind of done with Lego and they can't get on to the next thing, and they're like, I'm bored. Well, you can either do the take time for training, teach them something new. That's one thing you can do. Second thing you can do is actually say, if you're bored, I've got a list of chores that you might want to help with. And you'd be amazed when a kid is bored, they actually will say, I'll wash the car. Sure. It's better than sitting here doing nothing. Sure, I'll make a batch of cookies. Sure, I'll make a potato salad. I'll go on YouTube and figure out how to do it. You know, so you can do that. But it becomes just so easy. It just becomes so easy for kids to just grab that iPad. It becomes so easy for them to grab the phone. And then they can be gone for hours. And then because we're busy, if we've got work to do, we can lose track of how much time they've actually spent on there. So when I say use it strategically, what I mean is I think in this time of social isolation and social distancing, especially if you've got older kids, peers, they're missing their friends. They have just as much need for friendship in real life. That's a biological imperative. And the only way for them to get it now is through their tech. Gaming is very social. That is a way of connecting with their friends. And so parents can be kind of like, you know, oh, too much screen time. Everyone says it's so bad for kids. I think in this particular time, it doesn't mean that you can't rein in the tech time later, but because they can't see their friends in real life. You know, think about how they can be online and socially engaged in ways that are still supervised and healthy. And so, for example, Facebook has Messenger for kids, very high security. But if you've got little kids and they want to chat with their grandparents, or you've got co-custody of a kid and they want to talk to the other parent, It's such a safe device. Talk to their cousins. They can practice text messaging. I don't want to put them out on these devices that are meant for 13 plus if your kid is 8, but at 8 and 9, they want the video. They want the video piece. They know about TikTok. They know about Instagram, but those are for older kids. So start them on something age appropriate. And also the idea, again, about being strategic is when do you need peace and calm? That's when you can make it the time for them. So yeah, not all day long, but when it fits your schedule that you need the most independence, that's when I would say, pull out that screen time and let's not feel so guilty about it. The other thing is about having family meetings. Family meetings are a real lifesaver in situations like this, because what it does for you as the overwhelmed parent is it says, you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be figuring this all out as if you're the only person responsible for how your family is operating. That you're a family that's a team. And yes, you are the leader of that team, but everybody has a contribution to make at this time. That you're all stuck in this together. And so let's frame it that way. Let's not see it as like a kid who's misbehaving or kids who are fighting all the time. Think of it instead as, you know what? There's things that we could be doing better in this family for everyone to be happier. And we need to talk about that. And so I would say once a week, once every couple of days, whatever your family thinks that they need, where you can just look at the things that are not working and think about ways to solve it. So this is about solutions. This is not about wagging the finger and he had it first and he didn't give it to me and it was my time. This is about, okay, whatever happened yesterday, that didn't work. How are we gonna go forward? Let's generate some new ideas. So it's essentially about problem solving. And that's so empowering for parents because it means that you don't have to constantly be thinking about you being the problem solver or framing it as a kid who needs to be managed and disciplined. And if you listen to your kids, they come up with incredibly brilliant solutions that are more outside the box, but they're more likely to work and be effective. And I've given an example, maybe even in my other webinar with you folks, about my kids taking their socks off and shoving them in the couch cushions when they came home from school. And I was like, that's not okay. This is the common house. I don't want to smell them. And they didn't want to take them up to their room because they didn't want to do the flight of stairs. So, you know, when I said, well, how can we work this out? What's the solution to this dilemma? Not them being bad. What's the solution to this dilemma? With a little bit of work, my kids came up with the idea that they could take off their socks when they took off their shoes and put them in a little basket in the front hall closet at the bottom of the stairs. And then I didn't smell them. They didn't have to go upstairs and they could just empty that basket into the laundry basket on laundry day. Problem solved. So use the creativity of your kids. So think about what's happened in the last few days that has created conflict or hasn't worked for you, and put it out to the group and listen to their ideas. You'll love it. So effective. And the other piece, and I want to turn this over to questions because I know you've all come with something that's kind of going on for you, but I can't stress enough the need for looking after our mental health and doing that through our own personal self-care. First of all, you're modeling it to your kids, but think about it. Your work as a parent is like being one of those frontline workers. Really, it's an altruistic job of constant caregiving. And you can't work 24/7 in the emergency room. You can't work 24/7 trying to run around, trying to manage your work and manage your kids and all the things that you're trying to do in these unusual times with the fear of the world economy and all the other things that are going on. You will have burnout of some kind. That what they're saying now, that in this worldwide pandemic, the most important thing is that we keep social cohesion, that we get along, that we manage this. Everything else is a bonus. We'll figure everything else out later. So how are we going to stay well? How are we going to stay well? And so we need to be able to have respite. And it's hard in a home because we're all kind of confined, but you've got to make that time and we got to get strategic about it. And we know that there's some classic things: eating well, getting a good night's sleep, getting out to some fresh air, which we're still allowed to do so long as we're staying away from people, not going to parks where you touch things, but just a walk, fresh air, 6 feet apart. And getting out into the backyard, burning some energy, burning some muscle. I'm a big fan of mindfulness meditation. There's so many free apps. Everybody's putting stuff up for free. Free yoga. Everyone's putting free online YouTube yoga videos. What's important for me to stress to you is the way to know whether or not your self-care is being effective is if it is calming you. I don't want you to feel like, oh yeah, I should do yoga. Oh, I should meditate. Don't should all over yourself. Self-care is where you feel you are being rejuvenated. And if that means that you need to curl up with a laptop and do your Netflix and binge of 15 episodes of Grey's Anatomy on a Saturday morning in order to reset yourself for the week, then that's your formula. No judgy, no judgy. But if you come out of it refreshed and you're feeling better, you're like, thank you, that's what I need for escapism. Then that's what you do. For me, I like cooking. But for other people, it'd be like, oh, I should be cooking healthy meals. I don't do what you need, but take your mental health seriously. We know that in these cases, it's just too easy for people to pent up this stress, not have that outlet, not dissipate it. And that means you're going to be shorter with the kids, yelling at your husband. Things are going to be more tense at home, and that's just going to make things worse. So we need to decompress and have faith that we're going to, and optimism and gratitude that we're going to come through this out the other end. And so take seriously as a priority mental health, your own first as a leader in the family, and modeling that so that it passes on to your kids. So I'm going to, this is my, this couple looks really happy. I want to tell you that because it is stressful, and I know this from my private practice, it's going to cause stress in your marriages. The two things that people complain most about in their marriage is that they don't feel appreciated and they don't feel there's a fair division of labor. So if you are in a coupleship of some form or another, address those. Take that on head on. Honey, I need to feel appreciated. So I recommend to my client couples every day for just a moment that you hug each other. It's amazing how we get busy and forget. Give each other a hug in the morning and say, together we're better. Together we're better. I appreciate you. Division of labor, kind of like the family meeting. You need to say, listen, I need to work too. Just because the baby says, you cut my toes, you do my zipper, you do my whatever, I can't do that. You're going to have to step up, and you need to figure out some way that you can share that load so that nobody is feeling this repressed resentment that they're doing it all. And you need to be clear about it. Clear about who is doing what and how you can make that more, and I say equitable. I don't mean equitable does not mean 50-50. Each of you have different demands upon you and whatever. It's just so that nobody feels unduly put out. And I would talk about that as a regular part of your ongoing coupleship figuring out, so that we don't end up with they say it's either going to be a spike in babies or a spike in divorce rate, depending on how your family is. The other thing I said, I will go into the questions. I am doing just a strategies for dealing with kids and online learning coming up, if you want to join me there as well. And I'll probably have other webinars you can check out on my website. I'll just let you know other ways that you can connect with me, my handles on different social medias. I'm putting out an Instagram tip of the day. Again, just short, quick, digestible, something you can do right away to make things a little bit easier. And I'll be having an online parenting class if you found like, wow, I really need to get better at discipline. I didn't realize things had gone that far off the rails. I'll have more resources there too. But now I really want to turn this over to you folks and answer your particular question. So I'm going to kill my screen share here. And yeah, so folks that have joined us, how can I help you?
If anyone has any questions, feel free to use the question and answer in the chat function. We do have one that has come in already, which is how long do you recommend, Alyson, like taking toys away or any of those other approaches, for example?
Yeah, so with taking the toys away, the idea is I always want the child to have an opportunity to make a different decision next time. Now, it sounds like you're really disappointed. You threw the toy and mommy took it away. It looks like you'd really like to try again the next time. So the next time for a little kid could be the afternoon. Maybe you took it away in the morning and they get another time in the afternoon. If they do exactly the same thing again, I might take it away for longer. I might say, it looks like we're really having trouble. We'll bring this out tomorrow, longer. Or I might say end of the week, Wednesday. I would keep kind of increasing it with time, but mostly the kids actually they're starting to put together, when I do this, this happens. The more they get an opportunity to practice that decision tree, the faster the learning. So I don't want to wait too long before I give them a chance to decide differently for themselves. Otherwise, and they'll also, if you take it away too long, then it becomes really unreasonable in their mind, and then that feels punitive, and that goes against what we're trying to accomplish. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And the next question is how to best get 4-year-olds to connect with their friends. FaceTime seems to be often a struggle with attention.
Yeah. So if it's a struggle with attention, then they're not all that engaged, in which case maybe at 4 they're actually not missing their peers as much. It really, you're so connected to your family when you're a preschooler that you often don't have that same need for friendship. And if this was going to go on and on and on, then that would be different. I remember I worked for a family that lived up in, I worked in Algonquin Park for years, and they were raising a family at this resort. And so there was no preschool, there was no drop-in, there was no park, there was nothing for kids. It was all adults and these kids. And you can see that if that's where they live and that's their primary residence, over years, they would not learn how to share a sandbox with another kid. It wouldn't be part of their experience. So yeah, I would say you need to drive those kids an hour and a half to get to a play group, or make the extra effort to do something on Zoom or Facebook, because they can't totally miss the experience. But for us, this is just a gap that there will be the other end of this. And so I don't think there is anything that's going to happen in terms of our kids missing a particular milestone. So if they don't want to socialize, if they don't want to talk to their friend and they're antsy about it, I would say, oh, looks like you're not interested in talking to Sarah right now. Let's say our goodbyes. Goodbye. What I'm finding is that for some kids, this idea of, take time for training, I said first the parent does all the information, then you share it, and then you hand it over to the kid. There's a lot of kids who haven't actually had much opportunity to interact with devices this way. Now we're doing Zoom family dinners and things like that. And a lot of times what happens is not so much that they're disengaged, it's more that they're actually stealing the show. That kids that were in a group situation who would have sat quietly on the carpet, now that they're just being filmed, they kind of feel like they're on stage. And I'm hearing more where they're like, pulling their pants down and they're being goofy and they can't just sit and listen to the other people. They're not taking turns. So that would be a situation where we need to socialize them, where we actually need to say, that's not okay, but you can't put them in front of the camera and walk away. You need to be that parent sitting there saying, nope, this is what we do. We need to sit and wait. And then what's the consequence? If they don't use the social rules of the social media platform, then you say, it looks like you're not able to be on the Zoom call today with your friends. We need to sit here and take our turn listening. And if we can't listen and be patient, then we need to say goodbye. And then the consequence is that you turn it off. Say, we'll try again tomorrow. You're just learning how to do Zoom calls. I'm sure when you want to stay on the call longer, you'll learn how to take your turn. And then compliments. Thank you for waiting. You really had to wait a while for Christy to ask her question before you started again, or whatever. And so don't be angry that they don't hit the road running. It's just they need to learn. And one of the ways they learn is that when you don't use it properly, you lose the privilege. Yeah. More questions for me?
I think that's all that we see here so far. If anyone has anything else, feel free to write in the question and answer or the chat function. I just wanted to share really quickly in terms of partnerships and division of labor and everything like that. I saw a quote the other day that really resonated with me that I think would be great to share, which was, "You're never equal at the same time."
Yeah.
And I thought for me that really, really rang true. So it might be something just to have as a reminder for everyone else. If anyone has any further questions that they think of after the fact, feel free to reach out to myself, Christy at Kids and Company, and I'll be able to connect you with Alyson, and we can ensure that we get that answered. I also just wanted to remind everyone that we have recently launched our Family Resource Center online on our website, and we have lots of suggestions for activities that are educational that you can do at home with your child, or depending on their age and stage, that your child can do on their own. Some videos, some virtual events. The recording of this webinar will be housed thereafter, as well as some webinars that we've done in the past and more that are upcoming. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you so much, Alyson, for being here and facilitating for us. And we hope that everyone has a great day and rest of their week.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Stay well. Wash your hands.
Bye.
Bye.